Hi there, my name is Denny, and welcome to the Speak Dicely podcast, the show where I get together with other tabletop enthusiasts and we speak Dicely together. This week's class is the embodiment of nature's fury. Sometimes referred to as followers of the old faith, these individuals are powered by a source older than studied magic or science. Their existence harkens back to an older time where the line between humanoids and animals was less distinct, but they are able to cross that line. So today we're talking about druids, and joining me for this discussion are LauraK483 and Michael Piscitelli. Hey there, folks.
Hello.
Hello.
How are you both
that I
doing?
waved. I'm like, it's a podcast, Laura. They can't see you.
It's like in voice acting, you know, you embody the movement and it comes through in the voice.
Yeah.
The people at home can't see this, but I was dancing throughout the entirety of that introduction. Embodying druids, as I do.
Yeah, I just finished telling you guys that we don't use the video for this podcast, but maybe that's the only bit of video that this podcast will ever use.
Just vibing at the intro.
It's a fun little bop. Thank you, Sleek, for writing that. But yeah, we're talking about druids today, and the two of you have both played druids that I'm aware of. Michael, I've played with the druid you have played, and Laura, you've played a druid through quite an extensive bit of a live stream D&D game.
Yes, I'm trying to think exactly, because we went for 100 and some episodes, 2.5 year, once a week campaign. I'm trying to think when I swapped, because I started out playing a fighter, and then her storyline just got wrapped up so nicely and resolved. Didn't make sense for her to continue adventuring with the party, so I had to make a new character. And that's when my druid came in, and I don't know when. I think it was probably about halfway. So I probably done like 60 or 70 sessions as the druid.
It was about episode 50 of Dungeon Select.
Okay, so yeah, about 50 or 60 sessions as the druid in that last campaign.
I think when Denny and I were in Logan's campaign with the pirates, that wasn't near. How long was that one? Like 70 sessions total, I think.
I don't even think it was that long. I think it was like almost 30.
Yeah, because like ours also went over the course of like a year and a half, I think, something along those lines.
But we only ever did like every other week.
Yeah, if that. Like I think there was a month or two long hiatus where Logan was very active with work and things, and just things that didn't work out scheduling wise. But
the classic demise of many a party.
Yeah, shockingly though, that the pirate campaign ended up coming to a conclusion, which I actually really liked. I loved the end of that campaign. It was probably one of my favorite, like, of the two that I've ever finished, it was probably my favorite.
I suppose we'll roll right into this then. So, what are druids?
They
the
are
hippie tree huggers of D&D.
I mean, yes. Arguably also just like the stoners of the group.
Almost every time I see one of those, if like what your favorite D&D class says about you, like on TikTok or on social media, almost always it says a druid, you're either the stoner of your group or you're the person who tries to bring home every animal you find when out in the wild. And I'm like, also accurate. That one is me.
Or both.
I slightly resent the stoner one because the druid, when I was my druid in my party, I was the one constantly trying to keep the party from getting high, and like half the party in character and in game became obsessed with our version of marijuana, which was burning bush. And so eventually I just gave in and I used my powers to grow the world's biggest burning bush plant in our campaign. And we invented in-canon Burning Man. And that was how our campaign ended, was when our party broke up. And the end of the story, we meet back once a year for our in-universe Burning Man festival with the giant plant that I grew.
That is amazing.
Wow.
Yep.
Another thing druids are known for in D&D is, like, not only are they like these nature-themed spellcasters, but they're also able to transform into animals.
The best part of druids.
Yep.
My favorite part, at least, of the class is wild shape.
Yeah. So we're going to get into this later on, but the base player's handbook druid options, they're okay. I like Moon Druid purely because you can be any sort of animal you want after a certain period. But the land druids are
Yeah, when we get more into the wild shaping, I've just a good, and it proves why Moon Druids are just OP and broken in some ways, purely for the amount of options they give you when you can shapeshift.
But like looking at some of the other things, the other archetypes that you can get into, like Tasha's and all the other books, those are freaking cool. I would love to play one of those one day.
Same. I've only played things from the like player's handbook. I've never played anything from like Unearthed Arcana or any of the expanded items like Tasha's Cauldron of Everything, because part of me wants to just try and get through at least one variation of each of the OG classes before I then try like subclasses. But there's just so much cool stuff out there. I don't know if I'm gonna make it. I don't know if I'm gonna complete that goal.
That's fair. I have played every class at least once, even if it's just like one shots or like full on campaigns. But I'm with you. I want to try and play all of them at some
I'm
point.
only missing 2 from the core players handbook. I'm missing Bard and Wizard. I played everything else.
I'm surprised you haven't played Bard.
I don't know why, but I kind of I for some reason felt like it was going to be those 2.
Well, the reason I haven't played a Bard is because it's one of the people talk about the negative side effect of mainstream elements of D&D like Critical Role. I'm a diehard Critical Role fan, love it. And I played D&D before watching that. Like that wasn't the thing that got me into D&D. But it was my first, none of the parties I've been in, we just never had a Bard either. So my first ever visualization or witnessing of a Bard was Sam Riegel playing Scanlan Shorthalt. And it just set this bar. And I know, like, obviously, not every Bard needs to improv and actually sing their inspiration things on the spot and come up with witty, funny, hilarious, or emotional musical masterpieces. But that's just my head just had that bar set, and it's very hard to remove. And then we had at our party, we had a guest character for a while who was a Bard with a very different emphasis. Like he was a politician of the Bard class rather than musical inspiration. It was like he was just a very good orator. Like think like Barack Obama's speaking skill. He was just very engaging and made you listen. And that was how he got away with it because he wasn't a musical person. But I have such a hard time separating because the kind of Bard I want to play is to play like very similar to the Scanlan style. And I just know I can't because I hate singing. I have scratched vocal cords. I'm very musically not talented in that way. And it just, no.
My fellow adventurers. My gosh, that would be amazing. Obama in D&D.
His voice wasn't like Obama. I just meant more like that raw ability where you can't even put your finger on it, but like he speaks, you stop and listen kind of thing.
But now I just want Obama to play D&D.
Bard Obama.
Bard
Obama.
Bard Obama.
Bard Obama.
Oh.
But we're not here to talk about bards.
We're here to talk about druids, which are better.
All right, we'll bring it in. So we're talking about druids. So do you guys have any examples of characters that are kind of like druids in pop culture?
Definitely Beast Boy from Teen Titans.
Yes.
Especially like the Cartoon Network, not Teen Titans Go, but the one that came out when we were in our teenage childhood years.
Right, the good one.
The good one. Because he was a vegan. He has the shape-shifting powers. He was constantly like, he was the hippie of the group. Like he ticks all the boxes.
Yeah, I think the only thing he would have been missing was the ability to cast magic. So he was very close, though.
Mm-hmm. But like when you have shape-shifting powers like Beast Boy, you don't really need much else past that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like we've brought this up in past episodes as well. Like with the pop culture examples, it's going to be hard to hit the nail on the head in like a perfect translation of D&D class to pop culture character.
To me, the one I think of, even though this character has no magical abilities, does not shapeshift herself, isn't necessarily super in tune with the plant side of nature, but to me, the personality of quite a lot of druids, obviously you can play any class and you can play them atypical to the stereotype, you can do other things, but the whole like befriends every animal, wants to bring home every pet to the party, like the animals more than people vibe. I think of Giselle from Enchanted or almost any Disney princess that sings to animals or has animals sew dresses for them and like that kind of vibe. So I feel like there'd be a lot of good Disney princess druid crossover characters.
Oh yeah, like Snow White, Cinderella.
Yeah.
Ariel,
yeah. All the ocean creatures.
Arguably Belle. But that's more making friends with the furniture than as opposed to animals.
Well, that and she's a furry, so you know.
That too.
So she casts talk to plants, except for all the plants are dead because they're furniture and they can still talk.
So the way you get around that is you cast speak with dead and speak with plants
at the same time.
Exactly.
Yeah, new spell. Speak with dead plants.
Speak with furniture. It's a level 3 divination. Oh, what are the speak spells?
They're probably divination.
I think so, because you're using them to gather information, to divine something. So
Yeah, that seems like it would be the... Well, Michael's looking it up. I'm sure we'll get the answer from him.
So go figure. Speak with animals is divination. Speak with dead is necromancy. Speak with plants is transmutation.
Huh.
Probably because plants don't have natural like vocal cords or devices out, so that there's some sort of transmutating magic to allow them to be able, if they're physically speaking to you, not just like their spirit of the plant is speaking in your head. I've never really thought that hard about it until this moment. Like, wait, is the plant physically talking? Does it grow lips? Does it grow a mouth? Like,
you spawn a mouth on a plant. Oh God.
That's dope.
It could arguably be like in Alice in Disney's Alice in Wonderland, when she's in the garden and like the plants are like using their own like to talk.
There's a character that's a druid indeed. The Cheshire Cat is a druid, if I've ever heard one, with the weird like hermity stonery vibes, like the vague but also seems very insightful, and it's an animal that can talk, so it could just be a druid in wild shape as a cat.
The cat itself changes shape constantly.
Yeah, sometimes it's just an eyes in the mouth like floating around and stuff.
My mind is blown.
I also feel like there has to be some sort of like superhero or villains that are very like the nature magic part, and other than like immediately brain just goes Poison Ivy, but like other than her, there has to be someone else. I'm forgetting who has nature powers in like DC or Marvel universes. There has to be someone.
Okay, so Disney in general is just rife with druids.
Yeah.
One of the notes that Denny gave us was Maui from Moana, and
that movie.
Arguably, also Moana herself is more of a land druid, and Maui is a moon druid. Two druids.
Her connection to the water, rather than in the movie, it's like the ocean has this connection to you. Instead, maybe reverse it, and it's her being able to control or use magic, like control water, shape water, control weather.
Yeah, exactly.
In terms of like historic lore as well, we've thrown Merlin into like the wizard category, but technically Merlin is considered a druid as well.
He literally gets trapped in a tree. Like, that's pretty druid.
Yeah.
What a druid thing. Druid problems.
Right. And you're like, I got stuck in a tree again.
He's like a 10 druid, 10 wizard.
Yeah.
He's learned, but he also likes to fuck around with beast shapes.
Oh, I doubt either of you will have read them, but the Throne of Glass series by Sarah J. Maas, the Fae race in that book series, a lot of them have magic and it's tied to a certain element. So like ice, wind, fire, like they can multi-element some of them, but a lot of them, it's like their strength is in one thing. And a lot of the ways they use their magic in that book series is very druid. So it can be like a Fae druid or a half elf druid. Very much also fit just the way their appearance is described is very elven.
I feel like druids in general are often associated with like the Feywilds.
Yeah.
Just because purely it's a natural place.
And also just things like, like famous fantasy tropes and like Lord of the Rings is what people think like woodsy, naturey things, and associated a lot with elven races or races that have physical resemblances to elves and stuff. Like my druid, I was like, we're going the opposite. Halfling, teeny tiny halfling druid.
Yeah, my druid was a water genasi. Nice. So he was already had like a connection to the elements.
Yeah.
He just needed that little push into druid to be like, I am everything. I am the avatar.
Speaking of which is a great segue. I think the perfect like kind of encompassing of the druid class as D&D has defined it is encaptured in the swamp benders in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I can't remember what his name is, but the guy who only had like the loincloth bended the water and the plants to make himself into the big like swamp creature.
Really, any of the benders in Avatar but firebending, because then you get a lot more like wizard fireball and things like that. But like earthbending, like one of the biggest spells, the highest level spells I used as a druid was like shape earth and stone shape a lot. And of course, earthbenders do that. And then all the water benders, the swamp benders, and even airbending with like
to a degree
air-based magic. Although the only one that doesn't feel very druidy to me is fire, because fire magic is also in lots of other classes. Fire is often a destructor of nature, even though it can benefit nature at times. And just wizards are known for fireballs.
It's funny you say that. because we're going to be getting into wildfire druids later in the podcast.
Dang, Michael, it's like you're running the show.
Sorry, I know too many things about druids.
Don't be ashamed at all. Like, this is good. The less I have to do, the better.
I mean, if you ever want me to host one day, I gladly will.
We'll talk. Let's move on to talking a bit about the class features that every druid is going to share in D&D. Before we get into that, I just want to mention that we'll be ignoring all the optional class features that got introduced in Tasha's. And if you want to be an effective druid, you should make wisdom your highest ability score. But as per usual, just a suggestion.
I mean, you could be a low wisdomless druid, but like really that only ends up making you not be able to cast very many spells, making your DC for your spells really, really low. And then you're just not going to be very effective.
You'd be a druid who has very emphasis on the wild shape element and maybe like a much more brute forcey druid, like bigger animals, buffer creatures, and your magic would be like a last resort is the way I picture that, or like went back to do a corner when you're out of wild shapes. Because that's how my druid started, because where the premise of the halfling druid came was because she's even short for a halfling. She was 2'6". She was a childlike, even though she was a grown-ass adult. And her backstory is very tight as she was treated very horribly and bullied a lot as a kid because of her size. So the druid was like, I just like the idea of I want a tiny creature that shapeshifts into giant ass shit just for the juxtaposition of it all, right? And so whenever she would get pushed to her limit to defend herself, she'd become a big creature just because no one would expect it. Like the first time the party met her, she became a dinosaur and they were all very confused. So that, and the thing was at first she was very not magic oriented. It was, I am a wild shape heavy for combat, for utility. I use magic when I have nothing else to do, because also she didn't get a lot of druid training, and through the campaign and through influences, she had to kind of like learn a lot of stuff herself. She learned bare basics of druidry before she was laughed out of the druid circle in our world building because of being a halfling, and all the other druids were like elves, humans, races, like she didn't fit in. So there, and her wisdom was still pretty good. So when I casted magic, it was fine. But I could see someone going that way if you want to play a druid, but without heavy wisdom, where you're a druid that is a very combat, wild shape utility druid, less of a magic-y druid.
Absolutely. Wow.
And you get a good item. Like the item she had was called the Insignia of Claws. It's a harness that she wears that adds +1 to all unarmed strikes, which counts as every melee attack when you're an animal. And it makes all your unarmed strikes or weapon attacks considered magical, no matter what. You get that point as a druid eventually, no matter what. But at lower levels, you now have that from the beginning. And it's only like an uncommon item. It was pretty cool.
Oh, wow. So at first level, druids gain the features of the druidic language and their spellcasting.
So that's actually something I never really see come up very often in campaigns, is druidic. Like, I think a lot of DMs end up forgetting about it. Mm-hmm. It's just kind of like how a lot of DMs end up forgetting about Thieves' Cant, or at least in my experience anyway.
Yeah. Like, I don't think I ever once used written or spoken druidic in our whole like 50, 60 sessions. And we even met, because at one point we went back to the forest my character was from to save it, and we met like the druids who basically like ousted her and stuff, and we still never really used it. The next campaign we're gonna kind of be forcing our DM to use Thieves' Cant. Me and another player are using Thieves' Cant all the time. My next character can't speak, and they use the hand talk of Thieves' Cant, so like D&D sign language to communicate, and that's the only way she communicates. So that's gonna be fun. But yeah, it'd be nice if druidic was used more. Thing is, of course, it's not like a race specific, it's class specific, so I guess it's harder for DMs to fit other, because like you get whatever class you need for a certain scenario, you can make any race, but you might specifically need certain classes for encounters you're building or story purposes and the types of abilities they need.
Yeah, like even in the campaign I'm running right now as part of the Dicely DnD channel, like I just ended the last session with the players meet this druid and it's speaking in Sylvan, and that's because like none of the players know druidic at all, and I'm like, all right, well, I know they know Sylvan, so we'll use that. I do believe that this one is a bit harder to incorporate into a game, but I think it could be interesting if you've got a character, like maybe this is something more to do with like an investigation. Like you could have druidic runes on like these stone monoliths, and it's all part of this puzzle. The players have to try and interpret what they mean and figure out something. But yeah, it's definitely difficult to incorporate.
The other thing about level 1, all you have is that language and then spell casting based on your wisdom. That's where we say you can make lots of cool druids that don't have high wisdoms, but not maybe if you're starting your campaign at level 1, especially if you're experience leveling, because then you're screwed. Because the point is you need kind of wild shape to be a very viable, or not a very, but to be a pretty viable contributor, and that only comes at level 2. Or you also then have decent melee stats, and you're basically just like a melee fighter without the perks until level 2.
Yeah.
Yep. The spell casting you gain at level 1 as a druid is all influenced by your wisdom ability score. And as with the wizard and the cleric that we've covered so far, your spells are prepared spells. So you can refresh your list every day from the overall list that you can cast from.
And make sure, if you've never played a character where the spell mechanic is like preparing spells before, take some time, really familiarize yourself with that, because it can really hold up the party. It can be a big stumbling block when it's like you rest and you want to change your spells, but you're not quite sure how to do it. And also just really think, there's a lot of times people forget, and they forget to change spells, even with plans, like, oh, tomorrow we're doing this plan for this situation, so I'm going to do this spell, but you forget to actually physically on your sheet, on your D&D Beyond, on your whatever, change it. And then if you have a really like stickler for the rules DM, or and it's like you didn't do it, and you can get yourself in sticky situations where you make plans all around a spell you didn't prepare. And it definitely took me some getting used to when I began, because the only other spellcaster I'd played were like, you just have spells that you can do pretty much all the time, like warlock and stuff. So it took some wrapping my brain around. And then when you multi-class, it's like I can prepare this many from this class, but this many from this class, and only this level. The worst was when I multi-classed and realized, oh, if I'd stayed at 1 level, I could cast spells of like 8th level, but because I'm not actually a high enough level in either class, it's like I can actually only cast up to like 6th level druid and 2nd level cleric, which was my multi-class, rather than 8th level period. And it's so just definitely take some time, familiarize yourself with preparation and how many you can prepare.
Yeah, I've definitely fell into that trap. But like, I've also played a lot of sorcerers. I've played a lot of like, basically all of the charisma casters, where they, with the exception of paladin, where they all have to pick their list. So I've actually gotten pretty good about picking a list of things that I like and I know will be good for a general, like, wide array of things. But yeah, if you know you can change things and you know you're going to be planning, like, that is such a godsend of a spellcasting class.
It also leads to some hilarious RP moments when your party gets maybe very reliant on a certain spell. You get in a situation like, quick, do the thing. And you're like, I can't do the thing today. Like, what do you mean you can't do the thing? And then your party has to come up with plan B, C, or D. It gets pretty funny. Towards the end of our campaign, one of my character almost ended the friendship between one of the party members all over not having a certain spell prepared, and then the conversation that led to, and it was pretty intense.
So, funny story with that. In the pirate campaign, one of the characters, ironically, our cleric, who is the one who is actively trying to keep himself alive constantly, died. Like, died, as in dead forever. And everyone's like, how are we gonna fix this? I'm like, I can do it tomorrow.
Yeah. Keep the body safe.
Put it on ice. No big deal.
Yeah.
Well, it was reincarnate, so like
he changed race as well when he was brought back, which was also great. Okay, you know what? We're gonna jump to level 2, and then I'll introduce my gripes here. So at 2nd level druid, you gain this wild shape we've been talking so much about. It's the ability to transform into animals. You can use it twice per short rest as a bonus action. You can turn into land-based beasts up to a
I think it's only a bonus action if you're Circle of the Moon. That's one of the things that makes Circle of the Moon overpowered. It's a full action for other classes.
Correct.
Oh my gosh.
Because that means you can attack on the same turn you shapeshift when you're Circle of the Moon, which is Pog.
Oh my goodness. You know what? I did my research before this and I messed that up. Wow. Yep. It is an action. So you could turn into land-based beasts up to CR 1/4, and you must have seen these creatures. You can stay in the form for a number of hours equal to half your druid level, and you can't cast spells or speak while in this form, but you can continue concentrating on a previously casted spell.
which also means you could cast on Circle of the Moon. You could cast a spell and then bonus action shapeshift and then like run away or something and still be concentrating on it, which is so good.
We've actually had a lot of points where I would shapeshift into a rat while having cast Pass Without Trace. And I went into the pocket of our Tabaxi captain while as a rat.
Cat and mouse, haha.
Uh-huh. But I was basically their portable cloaking device.
I like it.
At second level is where druids get their subclass choice, also called Druid Circles. There are 7 options for this class, and the player's handbook gave us the Circle of the Land and the Circle of the Moon. Xanathar's Guide to Everything gave us the Circle of Dreams and the Circle of the Shepherd, and Tasha's Cauldron of Everything gave us the Circle of the Spores, Circle of the Stars, and Circle of Wildfire, and you gain subclass features at 2nd, 6th, 10th, and 14th levels.
Yeah, the only subclasses I know anything about are the Player's Handbook 2, the original 2, because like I said, I'm on my mission to play through most of the original content. I know a little bit about the Shepherd one from Critical Role, because they had a guest character who was a Shepherd Druid, but of the original 2, like almost everyone that I've ever talked to agrees there's like almost no question. Like you only take Circle of the Land if you want to play D&D on hard mode. There's just no reason because you get all the good stuff with Circle of the Moon. Not only is Wild Shape become a bonus action, so you can do a lot more on your turn. The challenge rating of the beasts you can shift to basically goes up faster with Circle of the Moon. It like doubles and it should be second fly and swim much sooner. The biggest thing though, I find is also I think you can stay in. No, I don't think it changes the number of hours.
No, it doesn't change.
But getting the bigger creatures soon is what's helpful because that saved my life in our campaign because I basically had my character got stabbed with this like dagger that was a fang of a god and it like embedded itself in my character and basically every 6 seconds it was sending out a wave of an insane amount of damage until it could get me to someone that could fix it. So I wild shaped into just what I knew had the biggest health pool for my thing. And then when I dropped it, I shaped again because not only is this, you get the abilities of an animal, it's basically a free health pool. It's a way to heal yourself without healing. So if you're like, I'm on 10 hit points, I don't want to die. Even if you don't want to use the animal's abilities, become an animal just to give yourself that extra chunk of hit points until you can get somewhere safe. Huge.
Yeah, I think the Circle of the Moon is the most popular druid circle to take because it's firstly great because it makes this class like in my opinion, this is one of the most versatile classes. You can be the tank, you can be the stealther, you could be the scout, you could be the frontliner, you could be the backline, even healer, backline offensive spellcaster. Like you've got so many options available.
I think that's also kind of an intimidating fact about the druid is that there's so many options that you can do with it that a lot of people look at it and be like, ugh.
I mean, the people that are intimidated by that are intimidated by the game in general because
by
of
anything that's not like a fighter.
Possibility paralysis. Yeah. But I mean, yeah, if you're looking for the flexibility, it's great. I myself am curious to end up playing a Circle of the Land because to me in my brain, I'm like, it's like the wizard druid. And I like being a heavy spellcaster. So I'm like, I want to do this at some point.
I will say the Circle of the Land is okay at best, purely because you get that extra ability to get spell slots back. But like, if you want to be a heavy spellcaster and still be a druid, you can be any of the other subclasses mentioned, like Circle of the Wildfire. They are big on destruction and also big on healing, because their whole thing is fire cleanses the land, but also cleanses wounds and can be destructive.
Yeah, because you like cauterizing a wound the way fire, sometimes after a forest fire, things grow back more lush, sometimes like that mentality. Yeah,
exactly. Or like Circle of the Shepherd, where you can summon fake creatures to help out with the party. Like yes, Circle of the Land gets a whole bunch of other spells that you can prepare, but like comparatively speaking, I'd rather play literally any other circle.
That's great. Let me have my land. But yeah, it's interesting. Yeah, I think both the Dreams and the Shepherd from Xanathar's are both very Fae oriented.
Yeah.
And then you got Spores, which is kind of the necromancer equivalent of Druid. And Stars, I think I haven't really read that one, but I believe it to be a bit more Eldritch flavored.
It seems interesting. I think I'd want to try it out someday, but I'm not entirely sure how I feel about it yet.
Just from the name and my guess at the direction it's leaning, I would love to play that and then make her voice sound like Luna Lovegood from Harry Potter.
Yeah.
Just kind of spaced out all the time, but like actually just she knows shit you don't know. She's not spaced out. She's just in another plane. She's transcended you.
I am mistaken. It is more about constellations and that
Yeah,
kind of
astrology and stuff like that.
Oh yeah, it gives you an astral form that lets you do cool stuff depending on what constellation you're embodying.
Oh, I want to play the crap out of that now just because I'm so into that stuff.
Yeah, that sounds great. I like that.
The dream one kind of makes me laugh, considering how often elves are considered like the druids.
Yeah,
and they don't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
They trance. They will never sleep.
The Circle of Dreams one just makes me think of, because we were reading about the new Dampier race, the D&D basically not evil version of vampire, and one of the things they can feed on doesn't have to be blood. They could feed on dreams, and I just think of, so I know, like, imagine a Dampier that feeds on dreams as a Circle of Dreams druid.
Oh, that would be cool.
Ideas.
There's one other gripe I want to throw out is D&D has great class design, in my opinion. Like, they make, like, right off the top, I think the philosophy is immediately you should have the thing that defines your class. My dogs are barking. I don't know if the recording is going to catch that, but I think what's unfortunate about the Druids design is I think they anticipating the class being more about the spellcasting, but it's more about the wild shape. So wild shape should have been first level with spellcasting.
I 100% agree. Because like anyone I know who's played it, they only play it on a campaign where you're not starting at level 1 because it's just not fun, man.
Yeah.
Not fun.
So Wizards of the Coast has been doing a lot of things that have to do with like proficiency bonus and having things tied to that. I honestly wish that was the case with wild shape, because like as you get more proficient as a druid, you should be able to, you know, change shape more often than twice, all the way up until level 19. Like, that just seems kind of ridiculous to me.
Well, because what goes up is the duration you can stay in that shape, right? So you could still technically be an animal all day. Like, I got to the point where I could be an animal for like 24 hours, like basically straight through. But it is only 2 uses. So it's 2 animals, like 12 hours each. And so like the odds for utility usually is you shapeshift rapidly for different, like I need like the digging abilities of this creature. Now I need the climbing abilities of this one. Now I want to fly. Now I want to breathe underwater. You're not usually staying as one for hours unless it's for like transport or mobility purposes. Like you're becoming a horse so your party can ride on you or something to get somewhere. Like,
but I mean, you use it twice and then you only have to wait an hour before you can do it again.
That is true.
It's
a short rest, not a long rest.
That is actually something I would constantly forget about, is that you get it back on a short rest. There's so many things that I forget about with all the classes that I ever play, that you get stuff back on short rests. I just end up not using them in the end.
The thing I always forgot was nothing class-based with my druid, but like I said, my druid was a halfling. Halflings can re-roll natural ones, and I never remembered for like 40 sessions.
Oh
no.
No, but that's the best thing about halflings.
I know, and then finally I remembered. Every time I did it, there was like mini celebrations. We're all just like, finally.
So moving forward in these class features, as with a lot of spellcasters, they really don't get a lot of shared abilities with every other subclass, because they're just gaining spells at certain level up points. But 4th level, we get a wild shape improvement, and you can choose beasts that can swim, and up to a challenge rating of 1/2.
Or
8th level,
1 if you're Circle of the Moon. It literally doubles. That's how overpowered. So here's my Circle of the Moon. You can't see podcast because you're not in the video, but I have a whole Circle of the Moon Druid cheat sheet that lists at each levels, because doing the math in my head was too hard. But yeah, you can become challenge rating 1 by level 4. You can be some crazy things by level 4. I can be a giant shark at level 4. That's just ridiculous.
Yeah. It's amazing. Like what, despite these transformation levels seeming pretty low, there are some good creatures that come out of these. Again, we get another wild shape improvement at 8th level. You can now choose beasts that can fly, and up to a CR of 1, or like Laura's pointing out, 2 if you're the Moon Druid.
So starting at level 6, you can transform into a beast with a challenge rating as high as your Druid level divided by 3, rounded down.
You know what? I thought I knew this. Apparently I don't. But that's for Moon Druid, yes?
Yeah, Moon Druid just throws a whole wrench in the
We're
whole.
just really into wild shape.
All right. In that case, I'm not speaking to Moon Druid at all because it's been too long.
And it's broken.
But I don't have much to fear because now from 8th level, we jump to 18th level where we get the next shared ability. 18th level, you get Timeless Body and you get Beast spells. Now, what Timeless Body does is, this is more of a flavor thing, but your body only ages 1 year for every 10 years that pass. And with Beast spells, you can now cast spells in wild shape that only require verbal and somatic components. And like if it needs a material component, you still won't be able to cast that spell.
Arguably, though, if you had the spell and you were like a panther and just like, or if you had the component and you were a panther and it was just like laying there in front of you, theoretically you would be able to use it, but that's up to your DM at that point. Yeah,
if you're going rules as written, like, you still can't provide the material components. It says right there.
Yeah.
I think there's usually the material components are like in, a bag on your person, in a pocket. And when you're an animal, all those things get absorbed. Like your inventory and stuff is gone. Not necessarily, but like the most common assumption is if the materials were on your person, anything you're carrying on your person, barring special items, goes away when you wild shape. Like, for example, other than my character kept that harness I was talking about because it related to her wild shape abilities and it was for that purpose. It also meant it was funny whenever I shapeshifted, I was an animal, but wearing a cute little harness. And it was really funny. Or like a giant bear wearing a very scary looking harness. It's like, why is your bear have leather straps with a big old gem in the middle? This is an extra level I didn't need.
So you're saying your character was a leather bear?
Yeah. Pretty much.
Anyway, at 20th level, you become an archdruid, which means you can wild shape an unlimited number of times. You can now ignore the verbal, somatic, and material components, as long as those material components aren't consumed and don't have an associated cost. And that goes for both your humanoid and wild shape forms.
You basically become a god.
You are a bear that shoots lightning.
You are the Avatar.
Oh, technically, you can do that without being level 20 if you're a Dragonborn Druid, because it says you retain the abilities of your race and whatever when you wild shape. And I'm like, that means breath weapons. So you could be an animal with a Dragonborn breath. You could be a mouse, walk up to someone like, oh, look at the cute little mouse, and then breathe lightning or fire or ice or poison on them.
Get out of here. What are you talking about?
I saw a TikTok about this. And they're like, no, they read the rules. Like, you can. Because the point is, normal people, like if you polymorph or something, right? Because the difference between, say, polymorph versus wild shape, if you're polymorphed into an animal, you take on all the stats and traits of that animal, including its intelligence, its charisma, and like your memories. Wild shape, it's just the physical attributes. You get the strength, the dexterity, the constitution, but all your racial abilities, your class abilities that apply, and you as a person, like your charisma, your thing, are still there. And it says specifically your racial abilities don't go anywhere. So you can have a breath weapon as a druid.
You retain the benefit of any features from your class, race, or other source and can use them in the new form if the new form is physically capable of doing so.
So if your new form has a mouth and breathes.
My God.
A breath weapon.
So for those of you at home, Denny was sitting there in shock, eyes wide, jaw hit the ground as Laura explained this, as his mind was blown.
I'm really mad I didn't make a Dragonborn Druid now, man.
I am always learning something new. You know what this means? If you were a Tabaxi Druid too, you could go like, turn into a bird and then like 60 feet of movement, 120 feet, and then I don't know if you can.
Just
yeah.
gone.
Just you're gone. You're out of here. You have gone to the other side of the continent.
Leaving on a jet plane.
And if you're a rogue and if you multi-class as an animal, because you get stealth attack. You get your stealth bonus. If you're sneak attack, that's what it's called. If you could be like a panther, be something really stealthy, they don't know you're there, then you attack in your druid wild shape, but you also get sneak attack on top of crazy damage.
You're a tabaxi and you transformed into a jaguar. I like it. Yeah, it's like their wild shape is just and they get down on all fours.
That's it.
No other shape. They don't even bother like having their clothes meld with their body. Their clothes just stay on them as is, and they're just on all fours.
Yep.
Oh, great! Wow, my mind is blown. I'm gonna need to take some time to recuperate from this. So we're gonna take a quick break here, and when we come back, we're gonna talk about the roleplay aspects of Druid characters. Stay tuned. Hi there. Do you have a podcast you'd like to promote? How about sponsoring an episode of the Speak Dicely podcast? If you'd like to get in touch with me about including an ad during one of our episodes, contact Denny at dicelychannel@gmail.com. Now, back to the podcast. And welcome back, everybody. So we are talking about druids, and now we're going to be getting into the a bit more of the role play aspects. I'm joined here by Michael and LauraK483. And how do you both go about making an interesting druid character if you start with the class as the concept?
Well, like I said, my whole druid came about for just the juxtaposition of I want something really small that becomes something really big for both shock value. And for her, her whole journey, the whole campaign was a journey about confidence and like trusting herself and realizing her worth and her value, right? And that it's not tied to her physical thing and stuff. But other than that, I think it's interesting as long as your druid is more than just I like plants and I like animals and I like just like just make something like obviously a lot of those things we mentioned, the stereotypical core traits many druids have, they're there for a reason, they exist, but also have something maybe a little bit more, and then you've got a really, really interesting druid. And there's so many backgrounds that work really well for druids as well.
So the druid I made came about as a joke. He was a fluid druid.
Love it.
Yeah, so our friend Adrian actually came up with a bunch of like stupid rhyming things like fluid druid, for example, or lizard wizard, who would be a lizard folk wizard of some kind. And like a whole bunch of other ones like that. I thought Fluid Druid was so funny that I was just like, you know what, we're about to do a pirate campaign. Or not really a campaign. It was supposed to start out as a series of like one-shots that would just end up being like, hey, if anyone's free and they want to do this, let's go. But then after not murdering mermaids, I don't know what you're talking about, we ended up having an overarching story that ended up going up along with it. So I'm like, well, shit, I have this joke character I need to make into an actual...
Those are sometimes some of the best characters that start out as like meme joke characters. Because all my D&D characters start with one simple idea and then become a 5,000 word backstory. Like the character before the druid was just, I want a samurai inspired, like Zoro from One Piece character, but they're deathly afraid of their sword, or a character who is a badass sword fighter but refuses to touch the sword, even though that's their thing. And then it became a very in-depth, very detailed character. And again, this one was, I want really, really little creature that becomes really, really big. And that just became, and then it became a very interesting and very beloved druid character. So a lot of times just some simple, seemingly silly or funny idea, it's very easy to then just add to that.
What's great with starting with a character that is kind of a joke and then continuing to explore them is you have a place for growth, because
exactly
you start at a place that's immature, and as you get further into the story, you're like, well, now I got to rationalize all this stuff. Like in the same pirate campaign, I was just like, I want a character that talks like Jack Sparrow and be drunk a little bit, and then he evolved into something much more sinister and overarching on the party.
Yeah, like the Druid River that I will constantly be referring to all the time. He was a joke. He was a carefree, free spirit that just kind of wanted to go out and do things around the world, and not have to think about his master that had been turned to stone because of things that were outside of his control.
Yeah. Also, joke characters, then it's like when you have serious moments, it just makes them that much more weighty. Like, again, it's not a druid, but thinking of Scanlan Shorthalt's the Bard, because he was usually just a meme character making like puns and song jokes and like sex jokes the whole time. But then when he went off on the party, when he had his whole like, what have you done for me? I don't think any of you care about me. You're using me. And like he had that whole thing. It was like the audience, the party, everyone was just like stunned into silence. And like the growth and the RP and the conversations that came from him having like a serious, I'm upset and I'm not okay moment was great. And even then, like my druid was very, very introverted, very shy, because where her druid background came from was because she was so bullied growing up because of her size and so many other things. She basically went and willingly became a hermit in the woods just because animals didn't make fun of her. Animals were not like animals don't talk back to you the same way. Animals are better company than people. And she literally lived by herself in the woods for the bulk of her a teenage to adult life because people were just that horrible to her. She's like, I've had it. Because who makes happy D&D characters, right? So it wasn't like she was naturally, like as a kid, she wasn't like, I love nature or I love animals. It was just, I've been pushed into this because it's better than being around civilization. And then she was also very shy because she didn't talk to people. So she had a stutter. She would never talk to NPCs. She still had trouble talking to the party. She was very quiet, a much like a higher pitched kind of childlike voice. But then when she was pushed to a breaking point, the first time I just got mad and just started yelling and like the stutter went away to the party. Again, party was just like shocked silence. And even our big ass Dragonborn barbarian was like, guys, I'm scared of the 2-foot halfling right now because I haven't seen this side of her. I don't know what she's gonna do. I don't know if she's okay. She might just friggin' like she might just tidal wave me right now. I don't know what's going on. And the few times whenever Trim lost it was Trim was her name, my character. It was just great RP because the party was just so not used to it. She was such a docile and meek and shy character. So in joke characters, it's the same thing. When you have then the moments where you veer off of that, it's so good.
And this is great advice too for character building in general. Like, if you have a concept or even just start silly, go for it. Just do it, and let the character unfurl for you. And if you experience in your roleplay like moments that are very opposite of who they are, that's fine because people are also spontaneous. And I think getting into the mindset of what would my character say in this moment, and having a narrow definition of what that means is unrealistic because sometimes people are irrational and people act in ways that even surprise themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also so much D&D TikTok. I saw a TikTok where someone was talking about, because the prompt was say something that is universally true or try and say something no one will disagree with. And they said, if you are the asshole who constantly makes life harder for your party and the justification is it's what my character would do, There are times where obviously you need to be true to your character, but there's times where you can also step back a bit and go, what makes this a better group role play experience? Because at the end of the day, you're still playing a group game. You're not playing a solo video game in your house where you can do the renegade run if you really want to and just be an asshole. Like your actions still affect other people's enjoyment of your time there. So there is a time to balance what's the strict hardcore in character versus taking a little liberties with that. Not saying like do something completely out of character, but you don't have to do the hard and fast, this is what they would do every time if it makes everyone else miserable.
Absolutely. That is something you gotta carry with you through social games.
It's funny you mentioned the whole going rogue in a video game setting. I actually played a game where it was an older dude. He was like in his 60s, but for some bizarre reason, he constantly decided to do everything contrary to what would have been constructive to things happening in the world. Like, in the game that we were playing, there were consequences to all of your actions. So, like, if you were to go up to someone, stab them, and then throw them over a wall in front of the town guard, yeah, they're going to try and arrest you. Yeah, they're going to call for backup because you're the big barbarian that's trying to kill people. Yeah, your party's going to be like, why the hell did you do that? And he'll say, oh, I thought it would be fun. Dude, there's more to life than just that.
Yeah, like in our case, we had two characters. Our party was we had some members who were starting to get a little bit carefree with actions, like clearly being like, we don't get consequences. Our DM loves us, And it got to a point where they drugged an archmage and then beat him while he was unconscious. Like it wasn't good. And our DM finally was like, guys. And so there were some serious consequences. And also the party then almost broke up because the half the party who were like, what are you doing? We're obviously very upset with that. And our DM even sent us a message like, all right, guys, seriously. This is the limit. This is the line. You found it. Like you need to stop acting like you're God's gift to D&D right now. And it worked. Then those characters got their shit together and a lot of important conversations were had. Things were more harmonious. And my poor druid character tried to fix it by giving really crappy nature gifts to the archmage to be like, we're sorry that we drugged you and maybe hit you while you were unconscious. I say we, 2 people, 2 of the 6 party members did it. And I tried to give them tea. I tried to give them shiny rocks. I was like,
oh no.
It didn't work. They didn't want the gifts. They were like, just We need space. Just go away. Don't talk to us.
Oh, poor innocent babe. Oh no.
Yep. Some of the things that the Xanathar's Guide suggests for building a druid character is they suggest having a treasured item, a guiding aspect, and a mentor. So treasured item's pretty self-explanatory, but the guiding aspect is a bit more ambiguous. It's kind of like associating yourself with an element, kind of like what Michael did with his fluid druid there, but just being like, I am calm like the water. Like I find peace when I am in this kind of environment.
That's what you meant by fluid druid? Oh.
Oh no.
Never mind.
No. So fluid druid was a water genasi druid. So
I totally thought it meant you were gender fluid and hella queer because it's Pride Month, and that's where my brain went. I thought you just meant a really like queer druid.
Oh no, that would have been brilliant. No, actually, hilariously, this was one of the few straight characters I ever played.
Nice.
Actually, he was the only straight. Oh my god, he's the only straight character I've ever played.
I'm pretty 50-50 with like straight and then LGBT characters on my list.
Yeah, they're usually either at least like bi, if not like ace, with my characters.
Happy Pride, by the way.
Yeah, happy Pride.
Happy Pride.
Who knows if this is going to make it up before the end of June, but
it should.
It will. It will.
Oh, okay, fine. Yes, happy Pride.
Yeah, I think most all the characters I played, I've never considered my character's sexuality. I usually don't play romance, but if it came up, I'd probably just go with the flow and see what happens. But yeah, I don't know. Never really think about it.
Yeah, the druid I played, he actually had a crush on princess that we met in our campaign. But he was too shy. He was too shy to actually like talk to her because he was just like some lowly dirt creature that like went with would go with the flow and like he was kind of a hippie. So whenever the captain, who was our tabaxi, would go like meet with this princess to like talk shop and whatever, he would always go as a bloodhawk, and just like perch on her shoulder, on our captain's shoulder, and he and her would end up doing all the talking, and he would just kind of sit there, just like, oh, she's so cool. I wish I could talk to her. But then, this was played by Dallas McKenzie. She was playing Captain. Oh no, what was his name? Captain Shadow. Yeah, Captain Shadow was his name. At one point, he started like confiding into the group, like, "Hey, I kind of like her." And River was like, for a second, he was kind of heartbroken, like, "Oh no, I have to compete with my captain." But because he'd been there every single time they interacted, he was just like, "You know what? No, I ship it. Go for it. I will help you if I have to. I will make you look even more piratey if I need to." And it was kind of a cute moment because like River was both like sad that the person that he liked probably wasn't interested in him at all, but also like thought it was kind of an awesome thing that like, hey, I can be the wingman too. Yeah, but yeah, River's guiding aspect I think was very much so. It was the freedom of the ocean. So because like he was a pirate, tried to be a pirate anyway.
I think Trim's guiding aspect, because originally she just sought out the party because again she was a character that I brought in because my original character that intended to be the one and only unless she died kind of wrote herself out of the story with the way things happened. Originally it was just because again she's like, I live alone in a forest, but it's like my forest is dying. I've heard of you because our party had reached notoriety by that point. They were like a known group. So it's like, I need you to come help me save my forest. And I'm braving my fears of humanity and civilization to seek you out to help me find this. So originally it was just, I just want to protect my forest. But then as she grew into herself and became more confident and like grew closer to the party, I guess her guiding aspect was, and she made it then when our party became a formal guild and we wrote the rules of like the Heroes of Exile. One of those, help others who can't help themselves, or help those smaller than you, because of course she's teeny tiny, but she's like, I have a big heart and I'm big on the inside, and so it's like help people who can't help themselves or who feel small. That was what it's like, help people who feel small. The
guiding aspects as the book kind of describes them, it's almost like they try and boil it down to like a nature visualization, and I can almost see that being like an ant.
Yeah, because hers, it was the shapeshifting was the biggest thing. The thing that tied her to Druidry was I use my shapeshifting to give myself courage. Like I'm scared of situation, but then I become an animal that's bigger, more threatening, scary. I feel confident now and I'm not so scared. Even to the point, like, it's like, oh, when she was living on her own, she heard a noise in the woods. Even I'll still turn into a bear, but sit in my house as a bear because I feel less scared now because at least I'm something, you know.
I have this image of someone of a tiny hobbit hole suddenly being completely filled with bear.
Yep. So happened. I broke a lot of furniture.
Other things I would suggest for trying to create an interesting druid character is you don't have to go land druid to be associated with a specific environment. So I would say choose the type of environment you're from. Also consider what your go-to animal form might be for different situations, whether that's stealth, combat, exploration.
Quickly going back to the recommending like that mentor part, I totally see where that would fit, but you can do very, like, again, it became very interesting to come up with in campaign reasons how my character was learning her druid magic along the way, because she sought out a mentor. She sought out the Council of Druids, was like, hey, I realize I have this innate ability, teach me. And they were just as mean to her as everyone else was, so she left. So she tried to find a mentor and didn't get one. And it turned out really cool. In fact, we'd even got a lot of comments in the chat to live stream our campaign, me trying to describe some of my magic or the things I could do to the party or the ideas I had, because I was never formally taught. I don't know the names of spells. I don't really know exactly. I just have I have an instinct. I feel like I can do this and this is a thing. And there would have been also in campaign, either from watching other people, learning from villains or NPCs, getting inspiration from other races or animals we'd come across that I hadn't come across before, and then being like, I could do that via magic. So I think it was really cool being mentorless as a druid and finding that challenge, because people are like, oh, I like your in-game explanation for that spell or how she learned it. So the mentor thing, obviously very easy. My next character has a mentor, so I think it very much is a great tool and has a place, but
yeah,
I think it's fun. It can be fun without it.
And that's kind of one of those points that's good for really any class to consider.
Yeah.
So River, he had a mentor who was his original teacher that taught him how to be a druid, how to wild shape, how to do all of those things. But he ended up losing his mentor by him turning to stone. So he ended up actually learning a lot of his magics through the temples that we went through in.
That's cool.
So like we originally went to what was considered the water temple first, as like one of the bigger overarching story points, where we learned about this imbalance in the world and how things needed to be brought back in peace. After that point, whenever we would visit a temple, I would always end up choosing spells that corresponded with each element. So I already had a bunch of water spells prepared as like fluid druid. But later on, we ended up going to, I think it was like the fire temple next. Yeah, we went to the fire temple next, where at that point I ended up learning a new cantrip. So I thought, you know what, produce flame is a perfect opportunity for this sort of situation. And it just kept going like that. Like later on, I learned gust of wind after going to the air temple. Upon reaching the earth temple, he started being able to like control. He was able to like cast earthquake and things like that, but most of his spells he ended up learning from nature and the world around us. And ultimately, Arc Druid River was the avatar, master of all four elements.
Love it.
Other things that you can consider. Being a druid, I think there is oftentimes an inherent connection with the conflict between nature and civilization. Unless you're making a character that is completely removed from nature and you're just using
mine was removed from civilization, not nature.
But what I mean by completely removed from nature, however, is like taking the mechanics and just being like, I can transform. More like our buddy Jason, he made a druid that was not druid in nature at all. Like, we allowed him to touch metal. He was more of an artificer in feeling, really. He could change forms due to this magical metal he had in his backpack. So he had the mechanics of the druid class, but he was not a druid in lore description.
That's something I love about D&D is that you can be whatever you want, and you don't necessarily need to be exactly what your class describes. Like there was one time I made, it was like a matador, but he was a paladin. he didn't have any sort of paladin oath. He didn't have any of that stuff, but everything to do with it, like the command spell, and compel duel and things like that, to be able to say Toro, to be that matador, like with Jason and Tuktuk. That character is so not druid, but using all the druid mechanics is amazing.
Yeah, so that's pretty much the gist of everything I've got to add about creating druid characters. Do you guys have anything more to add to that?
Well, we kind of, because then I got back on the mentor thing. We never did the what's your go-to animal form for different situations, like stealth, combat, exploration, and that's a fun one. So,
we better talk about that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mentioned before being was this on the podcast or was this just before? I don't know. But we had our Captain Shadow, who was a tabaxi, and me, the druid. If we ever had any sort of like stealth missions we needed to go on, because there was a couple times where
we did already talk about this.
Yeah, so I was the portable.
Yeah, the portable pocket thing. In general, I found the shapes I use the most. Anytime water was involved, like if I took any chance I could to be a shark, because I'm obsessed with sharks in real life. Like Laura loves sharks. Laura has swam with sharks. And so I was like, I want to be one. But on land, lots of like small climbing animals just for like vantage points. We had one test. I don't remember the specifics. DM be mad. We had like a test for some very important item we needed for some end game part of the campaign. That's all I remember. But I remember I had to be, and like a god was administering this test, and we were in his realm. I think it might have even been like Pelor was administering this test. I don't remember, but it basically involved an agility course. So I tried to become a monkey to like do it really quickly and stuff, and that was interesting. For combat on land, a lot. I think dinosaurs were my thing, just because also Laura loves dinosaurs, and it's hilarious, and we found ways to justify how I knew what they were. Also, I thought, what's the most absurdly large, threatening-looking thing that my tiny 2'6" can become? Dinosaurs was it. So combat, like Allosaurus, Stegosaurus, like those are my jams. I never got high enough level to be a T-Rex. Big disappointment. And then obviously the flying animals, lots of giant eagle, just because utility, flying members of your party, great perception. They have very high intelligence and can speak. Like, they're just so useful. Super. But the one I least thought like I would ever be loved, but it became one of my go-to shapes, giant scorpion, actually saved my life. When I mentioned that one thing where the dagger that got embedded in me and I had to wild shape into something that had good constitution and a big health pool to survive, giant scorpion literally saved my life in the campaign.
Yeah, in the pirate campaign, shark is especially giant shark. Great.
Giant reef shark. It's the greatest thing.
It's great. And it really helped when we were being washed all over the place in a situation where we were all underwater and there was basically a tidal wave going back and forth across
I became a killer whale once. That was dope. That was pretty cool.
So this druid I originally intended to be like, he's the guy who is up in the lookout in the crow's nest. So he one of his go-to forms was a monkey to get up into the crow's nest, because like wasn't high enough to be able to fly yet. But typically for combat, if you're ever on land, big cats.
Saber-toothed tiger, I became a lot.
So I wasn't allowed to choose anything that was prehistoric. So like I couldn't be a dinosaur, I couldn't be a saber-tooth, but I was able to become a lion, panther. I think there was another big cat in there.
Dire wolves are pretty good also for early, and you get them pretty early on if you go moon druid. So like that's a pretty big.
Yeah. And then Bloodhawk was one of my favorite ones to be when I needed to fly like stealthily.
Yeah.
Because like there was a couple times when there were wanted posters of us around this one town. So I just, as a hawk, flew around, tore down all the posters. You could, travel around without, arousing suspicion.
And then in urban situations, I just became a cat a lot. I just became a stray cat because no one really looks twice at a stray cat in like an alleyway or something, So for scouting, for perception, to spy on your own party. When at one point our big bad at the end game campaign, big bad, who's the one with the dagger in the body, and he had time in my brain and was basically trying to turn me against the party. And so I started testing my party without their knowledge, trying to like prove him wrong. Because he was saying things like, they don't care about you. They're just using you. They like, you mean nothing to them. So I started doing tests and then watching them as a cat to see if they would pass these tests. And so, yeah, lots of cat usage. Oh, I became a therapy dog for our barbarian. She was afraid of heights. So whenever we had to go on an airship or anything, I just became a big fluffy dog, and I'd like sit on her lap. Like, because in real life, there's people that are autistic or anxiety, large dog breeds as therapy dogs. It's the same as using a weighted blanket for sleep or anxiety. So there's large dog breeds that will literally just go and sit gently on your like lap or lean up against you, because that warm, soft, tactile, as well as the pressure mimics like a hug, which releases, certain hormones in your brain that'll help you calm down. So I literally also use wild shape a lot to be a therapy dog for our barbarian who's afraid of heights.
Aww.
Wholesome uses of wild shape.
That is great. Well, I mean, the next talking point I've got is tell us about a druid character you've played and what archetype you picked. But I think
we've been doing that the whole time.
Yeah. Oh, I do actually have another druid that I did play.
Yes.
He was a Circle of the Land druid. I don't remember what his name was, but I remember he had an outrageous French accent.
Oh my God.
And I hated him. I hated him with a fiery passion. I actively tried to get him killed, and he was one of the few characters I could not kill. I've had so many deaths happen with characters I've played, and I couldn't kill him. He was okay.
How is it possible when you want there's so many ways in D&D. How could you fail at getting your character willfully killed?
There was a point when we went into a Tomb of it was before Tomb of Annihilation came out, and it was whatever the 3.5 edition version of the really hard Tomb dungeon that's name's escaping me right now.
It might be the same name. They don't tend to change those, unless it was Tomb of Horrors, which is another
Tomb of Horrors, that's it.
I was like Tomb of Annihilation?
Yeah, so it was Tomb of Horrors that our DM had bumped up from 3.5 to 5e. Mm-hmm. And he said, bring two extra characters, because this is gonna end up being messy. I'm like, okay, cool. So I bring my dumb French druid and like a cleric and I think a rogue. The rogue died immediately after climbing into an orb of annihilation. We didn't realize that's what it was, because we thought it was just a random black portal. And we were like, okay, let's go through. Yeah, he was destroyed immediately. And then later in the dungeon, this like tapestry fell on the cleric, and it was like this weird yellow mold or something like that, and he died immediately. And I'm just like, what the hell? I go for the trap. I go for the thing that's actively trying to kill people. I go for the monster with this stupid druid. How has he survived? How have the other two characters died? So eventually we got to a point where all of us are just like, you know what? This is too hard. We're going to go home, and this is and he's just going to retire. He's going to go. He's going to be a mentor to someone else. And that's how I retired a character for the first time ever. Oh my God, I was so pissed.
I've still, knock on wood, never had a character death. I'm hoping how long I can keep the streak going, but
I'm impressed.
Yeah. Even I've had a few good deaths. I'm going to throw out a druid because I've also played druid and I am here.
Yeah,
you should definitely be able to talk about characters you play, considering it's your podcast.
No, it's fine. Have I only played one druid? Oh my goodness. So the one druid I can at least think of at the moment, he was a dwarven moon druid as well, because we all love to be heavy, beefy creatures. And his name was Waylon, son of the bear. And I gave him this like Russian accent. He was essentially just this like
Siberian baby.
Yeah. They're like these northern tribes that like had these like ghost stories of this monstrous polar bear in like the blizzards in the far north. And I was like, yeah, that's my guy actually.
No, it's just me.
Yeah, it's me. And his go-to form was a polar bear. And I flavored his attacks as like when his claws streaked across the air, it would leave like the Aurora Borealis briefly. So it was this very like colorful description of combat, and what a gentleman that was. I ended up multi-classing him into a life cleric, so I thought that was funny that Laura, you've also did the druid cleric multi-class.
Yep. Well, because my druid early on, I picked up our DM also says his biggest regret with that campaign was give you less overpowered items less early, because he gave us all like an artifact as a reward for something, but then they ended up being hella powerful. So I got a bracelet called the Charm of Restoration. And even in its unpowered, also the items would like level up as we did things. We didn't know how to level them up. It was like a secret, and the DM would tell us when it happened. But even in its base, like unpowered up state, it gave me like some sort of buff for healing. So we didn't have a cleric in the party. I was like our support. At that point, we had the cleric, and then he became another class, and that was the whole thing. So it was like you got to pass some sort of buff to healing, but it let you choose 2 spells from any spellcaster list. So I immediately was like, I'm going to be a bit metagamey, but also my character had seen people do it. Counterspell and Revivify. So now I have the ability to keep our party from dying, maybe. And then Counterspell is just the most utility, the greatest thing ever, and comes in super helpful. So before I was even a cleric, I had Revivify, and then I failed it 3 times, and it led to 3 deaths that were still in other ways. But my character basically had heavy trauma and felt very guilty. Well, she failed it twice. The 3rd time, she didn't actually fail, even though they told her that. She still decided and internalized it as I failed, rather than no, this magic was too far gone. It wouldn't have worked. I was like, no, I just did it wrong. And that led to a lot of like emotional issues. But then our party had like a time skip. And during the time skip for my next level, I was like, well, it makes sense then. I'm like, I don't want to fail again. I don't want to lose anyone again. I need to learn to be a better healer. So she went and studied with clerics. And that was what pushed the multi-class. So I'm always a fan of multi-classing is great and really cool. But I hate when people do it for like metagaming purposes, because I know these combos are great and this ability with this ability. It's like, no, there should be an in-story reason that draws you to that. So me, it was because I got that one spell, but then I failed it and I saw people die and I felt very responsible. So I learned to be a better cleric and I multi-classed.
Yeah, and I agree with the multi-classing with purpose. My druid ended up his faith in nature kind of became shook in our campaign, and ended up kind of getting converted to a religion, though it was still nature themed. So it was like, okay, yeah. But now I actually have a deity that I respond to.
Was he a nature cleric?
No, he actually ended up becoming a life cleric.
I mean, life domain clerics and nature clerics are pretty like theme-wise similar.
You know, I don't even think nature clerics should exist because the druid does, but if you want to be a whole cleric without going into druid, sure, do nature cleric, but don't multi-class druid into nature cleric. That's dumb.
That's dumb. That's literally why are you like you're a nature cleric just by multi-classing into cleric. So like the domain I chose for cleric was life domain, because the whole reason of becoming it was I need to learn to be a better healer. So
I feel like moon druid nature or life cleric is a surprisingly common combo.
Yeah, probably is.
Well, also because like nature is kind of like growth and new life, and there's lots of things that are very about like life and fertility and nature themes anyway. So it just kind of it's great thematically. I love imagine someone makes a druid who hates animals, but I think of like animals have been able to talk to me my whole life. I don't know why. I didn't ask for this, but they just do. And someone's a druid through force, and just like this the sheer ridiculousness of playing that.
Kind of like what is it, Dr. Dolittle?
Yeah, but they hate it. They absolutely hate it.
I think Dr. Dolittle does actually hate it initially.
I've never actually watched any of the Dr. Dolittle movies.
Well, I've only ever seen like the more recent ones that came out in the last 20 years.
Yeah.
He started the movie when he's able to do that. It's like, oh my God, stop talking to me. You're so annoying. Please just stop. I don't want to hear about your stupid squirrel problems.
Yeah.
Yeah. So why should people play a druid? And do you have any critiques about the class?
I think the biggest reason you mentioned right at the top is the versatility. You can be aggro, you can be support, you can be tank, you can be strategic, you can be druid leads to lots of really great RP just for the sheer amount of options that Wild Shape opens up to you. Like, oh, we're trapped in somewhere. We can dig our way out of it. We can literally shape the earth. I'll become like a mouse and squeeze through the bars. Like there's just so many amazing options with druid magic, and it's so open and you can take it so many different directions that it's if you like being creative. I feel like it's a very also if your DM is forgiving and lets you rule of cool shit. Like I know one time our DM, it would not be like he's like, I'll allow it, because in the moment it was really dope. And I wasn't the druid when I did it, but the druid could do it. I was a water genasi other class who had like control water and shape water. So I shaped water into the shape of a key and then froze it and then used a key made of ice to unlock. But I put the water in the lock so it like fit the pins and then froze it in the lock with things sticking out and then like turned it. And he's like, technically on paper, in the timing to the spell. Like, if I'm being sickler, I should do that, but I don't care. That was cool. I like it.
And like we've given Wild Shape a lot of attention. The other things that came out with Xanthar's guide and Tasha's guide, those actually take away the whole concept of the Wild Shape and form it into something else entirely. Like the Spore Druid, for example, you use use of your Wild Shape to make an aura of spores surround you, and those end up being something that can either damage your enemies, or I think they also can heal your allies or buff them in some way. Or with the Wildfire Druid, you can use you can use the use of your Wild Shape to summon a wildfire spirit that you can use to cast spells through. You can use it to attack. You can use it to fiery teleport, which is really cool. It basically disappears and then explodes somewhere else.
And even base druid magic without the cool subclasses, like some of the spells like Sunbeam, Tsunami, Transport via Plants, you get some bangers of spells, and both from support elements, really heavy hitting damage. You get a lot of cool shit. Control weather. Like, there's just cool things, man.
There's one really, really cool druid spell. It's a 9th level spell called Shape Change.
Yeah, where you basically like perma polymorph yourself without the drawbacks.
Yeah, so it only lasts an hour, but you can turn into anything you've seen before, regardless of and by the time you're a 9th level caster, you've seen a lot of shit.
You've seen some shit.
And B, a lot of really cool shit. So with River, it was one of the big boss battles. He'd seen before a sea serpent, like a water element, like one of the big ones that were in one of the core books.
Yeah, I believe it would have been Mordenkainen's, like the Titan elemental of water.
Yeah,
he'd seen one of those and was like, "We're about to fight a Titan, essentially. I'm gonna turn into that right now."
Yeah, or like in Critical Role, Keyleth got it and became a dragon, an actual dragon. You can do that.
And that's not even talking about all the other cool spells
but even low level, their spells, there's just so much utility and and even a lot of their cantrips, like Poison Spray and Thorn Whip for cantrips, you can put out decent damage at low levels with those things if you want to be in like a really aggro druid.
Yeah, like we've given a lot of attention to the Wild Shape, but like there's so many other things you can do with
and the Raw's ability, Wisdom stat, multi-classes very well. Like you can do Druid Monk or Druid Cleric very, very well. Big Brain, Druid Monk, Flurry of Blows in Wild Shape, because they're unarmed stripes. You can just claws and just go ham, just like swipey, all the damage.
So I think there is some ruled as written things that say like animals actually use weapon attacks, and they're not. So like a bear's claws are supposed to be considered a weapon attack, but like that's getting into weird like semantics about rules.
Right.
If I'm DMing and someone's like, okay, I'm going to be a bear and I'm going to hit 6 times in a turn, I'm like, yeah, that sounds fun. Go for it.
Yeah. There, you'd have to have interesting conversations between player and DM to like figure out backstory reasons as to why that would work. But yeah, I mean, these things are possible as long as players and DMs are receptive. You know, I'm pretty sure like you guys have hit all of the reasons to play the class and the critiques. I've already explained like Wild Shape should be level 1, but otherwise Druid is pretty solid, I think.
Yeah, my only gripe with the class is the land druids being kind of lackluster compared to all the other things. Like even compared to the just player handbook compared to Moon Druid, like.
Well, yeah, because there's only 2. Like when they first came out, when 5th edition would have been new, the player's handbook was like it. There's almost no reason to pick Circle of the Land unless you literally like, I want to play the game on challenge difficulty, or there's a character reason, like in your character building that maybe was related to it.
Yeah, or if you just wanted to be a purely like, I am magical and natural, but I don't want to be animals all the time. So this is so the Wild Shape ends up being like taking a back seat when really it's based on what we've talked about today. It's kind of an important thing about being a druid is turning into these animals. And when you make a subclass, it's all about more the spells. It kind of like, what's the point?
But I mean, it doesn't take away the animals, though. You can still do it. You just can't do it to like.
You have to wait so long to do the cool shit.
You lose the versatility of getting to be a tank because your animals are a little bit weaker, but you could still be the offensive caster, the scout. Yeah, like I don't think Land Druid takes away all that much. I think it's definitely less a play style that people are interested in, but you know what? I'm going to play it one of these days. I'll come back to you on this. I am determined to make this work. So, on a scale of 1 to 5, how would you both rank the Druid class? 1, you wouldn't recommend. 2, it's a boring class. 3, it's not your first choice but can be fun. 4, you recommend the class. And 5, Druids are your favorite class.
5.
Damn.
I'm more of a 3 or 4. Because I do like Druids, but they're not my favorite class. I think Sorcerer is actually my favorite class just because I have fun being able to blow shit up. But after playing a Druid from level 1 to 20, I think I would definitely recommend someone try it purely because you can do anything. You can be whatever kind of Druid you want.
It just really gets your creative juices going between the versatility of their magic and the versatility of wild shape. So if you want someone who likes to come at problems creatively rather than like beat obstacle till it's out of the way via either combat or brute forcing things, and you like to get like creative with how you solve problems or how you approach encounters or even like puzzles and stuff, useful.
I might even go so far as saying like Druid would be good for someone who's had a lot of experience with spellcasting and with D&D in general, and not necessarily as something that I would recommend for like someone who's first starting.
Yeah, I don't think it would be good for a first character just because of the spell preparation, because even someone who's played D&D for years, it still took like concerted effort, and I needed to make a cheat sheet for what I could prepare and how much and stuff. And
well, I think you just need a DM who's experienced and is able to help the players. Because almost every player is going to have a little bit of trouble with spells because there's so many and we don't always read the rules. But yeah, I would say though, if anybody's intimidated by like, oh, now I have to know all these animal stat blocks, do what I mentioned before. Like consider like what's your go-to and just know that.
There's also a wonderful website called, hold on. It's like donjon.something/5e. donjon.bin.sh/5e/monsters. No, it's a lot, but you can filter. So it has every like monster in here and whether they're from the monster manual to something else, whatever. And you can filter by types, by challenge rating. So you could just put in beast and then you can put in whatever challenge rating you're allowed up to. Boom, easy. And then you click on it, it brings up the stat block. A few of them, it might not have the stat block because they're newer or whatever, but then you can like Google it. But for the most of them, especially all the core beasts, like they're all there. That's what I used. Given we played our campaign, like we were playing virtually, so I'm already in front of a screen anyway. So it made sense on my other monitor. I just had this website up, and whenever I needed a certain stat block, I just pulled it. If you're playing in person, you could just have a laptop next to you or something when you needed it, or like an iPad, a tablet, a phone. I don't know how well it works on mobile, but
it actually works fairly well on mobile because I used Donjon a lot for trying to find magic items.
Yeah, because it's not just for monster. Like that's why the slash monsters, this is their beast list, but they have it for spells, for dungeons, for items, for whatever.
Yeah, hopefully I'll remember to include that link, hopefully in the description below. As far as my rating for this class, I'm going with a 4. I highly recommend Druids. I was considering whether to go and give it a 5, but I think my love of clerics beats it out just because the spell selection for clerics I think is superior to what the Druids get. I'm not a big fan of being restricted to this nature flavor. Whereas clerics the domains are very wide and you get, I think the spell lists are a bit more open and a bit more interpretable. But yeah, no, these Druid spells are very much in the theme of nature or the elements. But it's a fun class. I love it. If it weren't for being this nature themed, it would be a 5 for me as well. But thank you both for joining me on this discussion of Druids. Now, before we move on, I've got a bonus question for you. Remove from the wild shape like the restrictions of you can have a swim speed, you can have a fly speed, and CR isn't in question. You as individuals, as Michael and as Laura, what would your go-to wild shape be?
Me as I guess a shark. It will obviously if you're not near water, that kind of sucks, but like, oh, I want to be a shark so bad.
Off the top ropes, Laura the shark.
Other than that, like the land animal, but it's kind of like you're probably, if I'm allowed to be a dinosaur, it's gonna be a freaking dinosaur.
If we're gonna go like land, sea, and sky, then land, dog. I love dogs. Anyone who knows me knows how much I love dogs. And if I could be a dog and just frolic with other dogs, I would be a happy boy. Sky, and literally any kind of bird. I think like I loved the bloodhawk so much as River. I would just want, if not that, then like some kind of bird paradise. And then I guess in the water, I kind of like the idea of being a giant octopus, just because like
nice,
you can do shit. You can grapple with things. You can open jars. You can like outwit security guards at aquariums and eat the fish in the other tanks, because that's a thing that happened. Yeah, that's a thing that octopi do.
I think my go-to would be an owl. That's it.
Just always owl. Underwater, owl.
No, I just don't go in the water. Jesus. Owl do not swim. Owl do not go. No.
Have you ever seen an owl swim? It's actually pretty hilarious.
I have not, and I will look that up afterwards. But we're going to be moving on to our game segment now. So the game that we're going to be playing today is going to flex a bit of our home brewing creativity. We're going to be following on a one-word theme to create a few different magic items that, who knows, maybe someday we'll use. This game is called The Workshop. So, yeah, the rules are pretty much what I just described there. I'm going to be generating a random word, and over the course of 5 minutes, you're going to create a low level, a medium level, and a high level magic item inspired by this word. It doesn't have to like have the word in its name. It doesn't have to specifically have an effect related to the word, just inspired. So, are you both ready to generate this word?
Yes.
Sure.
So the word we've got today is cookie. Oh boy.
See, this is a problem because I'm immediately only thinking of one thing. So I just watched episode 93 of Campaign 2 Critical Role, which is an infamous episode, if anyone knows, and it involves cupcakes and the dust of deliciousness. But I'm going to try my best to stay away from that and not just blatantly plagiarize. Okay.
All right. Well, we'll see you in 5 minutes after we generate these items.
Cool.
Bye. The 5 minutes is up. Put your pencils and keyboards down.
I think I'm pretty happy with these.
Same.
Oh boy. All right. I struggled and I wasted the first 30 seconds trying to open a Google Doc. All right. So perhaps we'll go, we'll each take a turn starting with each tier. So I'll start with the low level item. My low level item is called Kooky Cookie. This is a cursed cookie. The cookie gives you advantage on Constitution saves after eating it for 1 minute, but gives disadvantage on persuasion checks because you have gone kooky.
I like it.
Oh, you could even have it like the crumbs, for as long as the crumbs are on your face, you have that disadvantage.
Oh,
so you wipe them off.
Perhaps we'll go to Michael and then Laura.
So my low level one is a bag of cookies. Inspired by my friend Adrian making all sorts of unusual bags in the campaign I was talking about with earlier with during the break with the bears. So it's produces one cookie when you reach inside. It's always warm when you pull it out, and it can be any cookie you want, but will default to a chocolate chip with you. No specified preference.
Dude, Jester from Critical Role would die if she could have that item. Just perma supply of cookies all the time.
The cookies are not magical. They disappear if you end up letting go or not eating it, and they are always delicious.
I like it.
I want to explore that bag.
this.
Yeah.
Love it. Oh, there's a monster in D&D, an in-canon monster that is a person who went in a bag of holding to hide from a threat, but then got lost in the pocket dimension and becomes like warp twisted monster over time. That it's rumored every night comes out of a different bag of holding around the world and attacks people and then goes back in. It's like the boogeyman of D&D in a bag of holding. You could have a cookie monster that comes out of these bags and hides in the cookie dimension and then comes out at night to steal your cookies.
As he was describing that item, I was thinking that I'm like, I wonder who's this benevolent being living in these bags.
It just connects to a pocket dimension full of friendly bakers.
Yep. I have two that I'm between for like low level. I basically my low level ones are themed off of different like flavors of cookie or types of cookie, and all of my items are like you throw this cookie in there, you break it in half, and something happens. It's kind of like my theme. So the first one is a mint chocolate cookie that when you eat it, it gives the user advantage on persuasion checks due to your minty fresh breath. Really boring, but if you're trying to like flirt with someone, persuade someone, join your party. Nice, like cookie tic tac. Or like one of my favorite cookies is a ginger molasses cookie. So it's a molasses cookie that when you throw it on the ground, a molasses spreads out of it and makes a 15-foot cube of molasses in the ground, so it becomes difficult terrain.
Whoa!
15-foot
or
cube?
Sticks people to it. Ground, like square. That's what I meant. Yeah,
I gotcha.
Square on the ground. It's not sitting in the air. Yeah.
Well, that could be just like okay. I cast web.
Yeah.
Cookie.
Awesome. Yeah. Oh, those are all good. Michael, do you want to start with the middle tier, and we'll go in the same order?
Sure. So the medium tier, I actually kind of deviated a little bit away from the cookie, but it is sweets of transportation. The idea is when you they take you to a certain location based on what treat it is. So every time you eat it, you get transported to wherever that place is. So for cookies, it's either your home or wherever you took your last long rest, or grandma's house.
Grandma's house.
Grandma can be whoever you want it to be, whether it is a hag or your actual grandma is up for debate. And then there was a couple other ones, like a bonbon would take you to the royal city, or truffles take you to a brothel, or a croissant takes you to the last known bakery you visited, which would be the place that you bought the croissants. So like you're always going back to that one spot. But yeah, so the sweets of transportation.
Nice. That's similar to my high level one. I like it.
Same. That was kind of like my high level one.
My high level one's kind of meaner.
Well, we'll get to that. Laura, what do you have for your medium one?
So it's a cookie that looks like a chocolate chip cookie, but is very sparse on the chocolate chips. Like there's 4 chips kind of in the 4 quadrants of the cookie. And because each chip is actually imbued with a magical effect. So you take a bite out of the specific section of the cookie based on the effect you want. So there's 4 uses, and each chip, at first I thought they were all stat buffs, like a +1 to charisma checks and +1 to intelligence checks. But I think maybe 2 of them would be abilities of the baker's choice when they made and embedded the magic in the cookie. The other 2, one would be advantage on attacks and saves, and the other one would be you basically get luck. You eat it, and for 24 hours you can re-roll 1 roll of your choice.
Dang.
And then the other medium one was throwing stars that look like cookies. So it's like, oh, they're not carrying any weapons. So when you ask, like, relieve yourself of weapons going into like a highly guarded place, it's like, oh, can I keep, these are just my snacks. Like I have low blood sugar. I'm like, fine, keep the cookies. But then you press on one of the chocolate chips and blades pop out and you can throw them if you're like a mug cookie throwing stars. And the chocolate chips also have poison embedded. So there's a poison save if any of the chocolate chips break when it hits them.
Baker monk.
Baker
monk.
Laura, did you make 2 items for each tier?
No, the high level is just 1 item.
Okay, I am impressed. I was pushed to get 1 item for each. Man, that's awesome. My medium tier item is called Yum Yum Baked Goods. Similar to what Michael did there, it's not always a cookie. I was just inspired to go into baked goods. It's an edible magic item that can take the form of basically whatever baked goods the caster or item maker is able to make. And it is capable of making a creature that eats it feel marvelous. After eating it, you will not need to eat for the remainder of the week, and at the start of each day afterward, you may roll 2d10 temporary hit points at the start of each day to start with. If you eat a second one within that week, however, that weight's going to go right to your thighs.
I love
Keep it
it.
away.
All right. And moving on to our high tier, Laura, we'll start with you and then go myself and Michael.
Well, again, the kind of using cookies for transportation, it was basically a pocket portal in cookie form. But how it works is if an individual eats the cookie, you are teleported to the home of the baker. So if you don't know who baked it, but you're just given, it's like, surprise, we don't know where we're going. We go in somewhere. Or if you throw it on the ground and break the cookie, it's everyone in a 10-foot diameter is teleported to the baker's home with you. So you can use it on the ground for your whole party. But not creatures of your choice, anyone in the radius. So be careful not to bring a baddie with you. Or if you want to just nope out on your own, you eat the cookie yourself.
Self-nopes.
My high level is called Traveler's Fortune, and it's a fortune cookie that if you break open, it essentially replicates the plane shift spell.
Cool.
So you break open the cookie, and depending on the flavor of the cookie will teleport you and up to 10 creatures within 15 feet of you to a predetermined plane of existence. The cookie always reads, "You will travel somewhere in the near future."
I got a new idea for legendaries when you said that. Instead of a deck of many things, fortune cookies of many things. Just a bag of fortune cookies, you crack them, and based on the fortune inside, something happens. Some are good, some are awful. You don't know until you crack the fortune cookie.
Also, I mentioned that depending on the flavor of cookie, you can find out where the cookie will take you. However, if you eat the cookie, you will lose the benefit of getting to break it open. So really basically what you're going to do is either eat the cookie and find out where it could have taken you, or break it open and figure out what happens.
Yeah.
Incredible. So mine is actually more of a plate item than anything. The Cookies of Entrapment. It is a plate of cookies with a tiny sign that says, "Please take one." If you take one, it's a delicious cookie. If you take a second one, so this is if anyone takes more. If there's one and two people decide to take one and then another, the person who eats the second one has to make a DC 15 con save or start turning to stone.
Oh, damn.
Oh, snap.
So the first person's like, this is a delicious cookie. You guys should take one. Second person, oh, yay, great.
Ruh-roh.
I love that it doesn't specify that it's like only per person.
The second cookie that is taken.
That's so funny.
It's a cursed item.
Oh, these are all really good. Thank you guys for indulging this this homebrewing session.
I'm glad that it was cookies. That was a great prompt.
I might send these to my DM and be like, in case you're looking for weird magic items, I got you.
For the people out there, at least for the items I've made, I can't speak for these two, but feel free to use these in your own home games.
If you want to have a plate of enticing cookies for like a hag that's like, you should definitely try to have this. Go for it. Like, I think that would be hilarious.
And this brings us to our final segment of today's podcast. This is a Question Dicely. Today's question comes in from @ModThePod on Twitter, and they've pitched this: 12 OG classes for 5e and 12 zodiac signs. Which is which and why? So this will exclude the Artificer class because it's not part of the original 12. And I didn't remember what the horoscopes were known for, so I made a bunch of notes, and you guys can use these as well, as according to horoscope.com.
I've seen so many TikToks about this, but I can't call it any one. They all blend together, but it's also a thing people love to do. Well, I think we'll start with Druid. Druid, to me,
I would say Pisces.
I was going to say Gemini, because again, versatile is one of the biggest things about Geminis and the versatility of Druid we kept talking about. And Pisces, because I'm a Pisces, and I think if I was a class, because I'm a very stereotypical Pisces in so many ways, I feel like bards are very Pisces. Pisces is ruled by their emotions. Pisces is a very emotional class, and a very artistic and a very performative. Or sorry, class Pisces, zodiac sign, very performative as well as artistic and affectionate. The classic D&D stereotype of the bard sleep with everyone, affectionate.
I was also going to say bard for Pisces as well, so we'll throw that in there.
I think Aries would be a barbarian.
Which one?
Aries.
Oh, absolutely.
Because Aries energy is just chaotic and very impulsive. And every barbarian I've met is like charge in head first, very impulsive. So we said Geminis were druids. Taurus, strong, dependable.
I
Taurus
think
maybe paladin, because like strong and dependable, you think of that like kind of
the
tanky,
oath.
reliable, the oath and the stalwart. Like,
I was thinking fighter, but yeah, the paladin also makes sense, I think. So I'll throw paladin in there. So Taurus is paladin.
Oh, but then there's Leo, this dramatic of going fiery and self-assured. I think that might be a fighter.
Yeah, I could see Leo being a fighter.
Yep, I'm into that.
Who's the monk? That's what I'm trying to think. Who's a good monk class? Maybe the analytical, just so I think of like the extract aspects part of monk and the trade. A lot of the monk training, the way that the flavor of monks, like having to train at like a monastery or an order or something.
I was thinking Cancer.
Really? Because I was thinking Capricorn.
Okay, let's see here.
So, I like Capricorn for monk more, actually.
Oh,
yeah. Because
serious, independent, disciplined, and tenacious.
That's all the things my upcoming monk is for the next campaign I'm playing. So yeah, I'm down for Capricorn as monk.
Okay. What do we have? Cleric.
There was one that I saw immediately. I thought cleric, but now it's gone.
Maybe that would be
Virgo.
Cancer.
Virgos could be clerik because most of the time the clerics are often voice of reasons in a lot of parties, so like the practical and gentle, and then like if clerics are healing, a gentle hand for a healing hand. But maybe
are clerics practical, really? Because I mean, looking at Cancer, we've got the words intuitive, sentimental, compassionate.
Oh, Cancer, yeah, I could see Cancer being cleric and protective, because clerics are the protectors of the party most of the time.
Throwing cleric in there.
We have rogue. We haven't done rogue yet.
Yeah.
Rogue's a Scorpio. Scorpio is such a rogue class.
Passionate, stubborn, resourceful, and brave.
To me. Not so much for those traits. I'm just thinking of all the people I know who are Scorpios, and they just feel very roguey to me. But that's
rogues are in themselves pretty resourceful in what they have to do to get around places. So like, yeah, I would say Scorpio's rogue.
And mostly it was the resourceful and the stubborn.
Yeah.
Was what got me.
What do you guys think about Sagittarius being sorcerers? Extroverted, optimistic, funny, generous.
Yeah, because sorcerer's charisma is your spellcasting stat, so that would go with extroverted.
Yes.
Maybe wizard would be Virgo, because the analytical side, the fact that they have to like the spell book and the way they learn their spells and the way their magic kind of works, and they're an intelligence-based caster.
I agree with that.
What do we have left?
So we've got Warlock, we've got Ranger, and I think that's it, actually.
I would say Warlock would be a Libra, because they're social, and the whole point of a Warlock is that they've
patron.
Yeah, they've gotten this patron.
And maybe diplomatic, because they have to, because a lot of the patrons aren't nice, and so there's lots of bargaining and diplomacy with your patron and how you got your abilities or how you maintain your lifestyle well.
And you gotta be pretty gracious with dealing with high entities such as those.
That leaves Ranger for Aquarius. I don't know if.
I would say Ranger's uncompromising. I would say a Ranger.
The uncompromising, I could say the rest of the traits don't really necessarily get to maybe original, because one of the OG fantasy, a lot of the OG like people think of, like Legolas and Lord of the Rings, that like firing arrows like a badass. The animal companions, very OG high fantasy. So a lot of things about Ranger are a very high fantasy trope, very common. So maybe that's the original part of Aquarius.
Yeah, you have to be pretty imaginative to be a Ranger as a character, because like.
Your class sucks. The plain original class, like updated Ranger and modified Ranger, great. Original Ranger, garbage. So.
I'm playing a Ranger right now, but I've used the optional class features, and oh my god, it is so nice compared to the OG Ranger. OG Ranger is trash, and Wizards of the Coast have actively said that they gave it the least thought.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah. So our breakdown of our list is this. Aries is barbarian. Taurus is paladin. Yeah, the Pokemon is paladin. Leave me alone. So Taurus is paladin. Geminis are druids. Cancers are clerics. Leos are fighters. Virgos wizards. Libra is warlock. Scorpio is a rogue. Sagittarius is sorcerers. Capricorns are monks. Aquarius is rangers, and Pisces are bards. I think we did a pretty good job.
I'm pretty happy with that.
Yeah, me too.
At least based on the quick descriptions I got from horoscope.com. Not sponsored.
A lot of them feel pretty accurate, though. Like, I used to be a super astrology nerd, and I'm less so. Like, I know less than I used to, but I still have general there's some, I think some of them are just so painfully accurate to everyone I've met who falls in that category. Some of them less so, but like Aries, Virgos, Scorpios, and Pisces are all just like everyone I've met is the same personality. Like they're just so, they have such dominant traits that are so obvious.
Would you say you and I are the same though, Laura?
Because you're a Pisces too?
Uh-huh.
I don't know. Because like Pisces is the one that's like there's kind of two ways it can go. Like the whole emotional. Oh, it was like I once got my astral birth chart done where you have to give you also like the exact time of birth, not just like day, month kind of thing.
Right.
And the person who sent it back to me, I was like, have you literally been stalking me my whole life? Because this is terrifyingly specific. And like, why is this so accurate? So
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like obviously the artistic, I say yes, because we all met in theater school. So empathetic, I see you's a very empathetic person. You're always like very like friendly, easygoing, to the affectionate there. Yeah, like I see none of these traits that are not Michael. So I think you're a pretty strong Pisces.
Thank you.
So you're both a couple of bards.
Let me guess. What's Teni? Hold on. I'm going to guess. I'm going to guess right now. I don't know Teni's birthday because I'm a bad friend. I'm a guess. I'm a guess looking
off the top of my head. Michael's cheating.
I think Denny's a Virgo.
Okay, now I have to look at those traits we had there. Practical, loyal, gentle, and analytical. You know what? I could see why you would you would think that.
Which one are you?
I am a cleric through and through.
Oh, that was my next guess was gonna be Cancer. Fuck. Oh, that was close, man.
Yep.
Teni, forever the cleric.
My next guess was gonna be Cancer for the intuitive one. Because you always struck me as a very intuitive person. Damn it.
Yeah. I mean, it's funny that it worked out like this too, because I was like, oh my god, I can't put cleric into Cancer because that's just clearly a bias, and it's like, nah, this is the way it's working out.
And it is funny that Pisces is one of the only classes I haven't played, but like and that's because of my own dumb things. My own associations I put on the class that I have to play it like this, or I have this standard to live up to, and I don't. It's dumb, but
yeah. I think one Bard is not my favorite class, but there was one time I was also inspired by Sam's portrayal of Scanlan, and I remember there was one time I did do like the improvising songs, and I accidentally hurt one of my fellow players, so I went up to them and did Cruins, and I was like, is it too late now to say sorry?
It's too late to apologize.
I think that's how they responded.
Because the thing is, he wanted to, because he would take popular songs, but then rewrite the lyrics on the spot to also be about the party. And I'm like, this is such a high level, and I want to do this. And I'm like, but Laura, you can't. You're not that good.
That is a very high level of like role play that I feel like a lot of people would be very intimidated with trying to emulate, which you don't have to. To the listeners out there, we've talked about a lot of stuff today about that we thought were really cool, but you don't have to do this, because the beauty of D&D is you can do whatever you want.
Exactly.
Indeed. And with that brings us to the end of today's episode on Druids. So thank you both, Laura and Michael, for joining me on this episode of the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
Glad to be here.
With that, I'd like to give the opportunity for the both of you to plug any projects that you're working on and your social media. Where can people keep up with you?
I'm real easy because it's LauraK483 literally everywhere, because I can't come up with usernames, but it's great because it means no one else has that name everywhere. So like TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, Twitch, everywhere. YouTube. My main focus is my Twitch channel. And if you like D&D, which I'm assuming you do because you listen to this podcast, follow twitch.tv/dungeon select, no spaces or anything, because that is the channel where we live stream our D&D campaign, and we start again in July, a brand new campaign from the very beginning, so you won't have missed anything. And we have some kick-ass new emotes that are coming out, and they're so good.
I don't have anything particular for myself to plug, but I will definitely plug for Denny to check out the D&D live stream that happens every other Saturday.
Dicely DnD.
Yeah.
Twitch.
You guys.
Which you should definitely check out.
Also his Instagram, because he did all the art for his party. He did his character art.
That is true. I have now released all the artwork.
You can actually also find on his Instagram a picture of the Druid River that he did for me and everyone else in our party when that pirate campaign happened. Because Denny's just a really awesome guy in general. and likes doing nice things for his friends.
And is very awkward when receiving compliments. So I'm going to proceed with my robotic plugging. If you'd like to keep up with Speak Dicely, follow our social media. We're on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and Twitch as Dicely DnD. If you'd like to submit a question for the podcast, send an email with your question to dicelychannel@gmail.com. And as a reminder, and as these folks have been so kind as to already bring up, oh, actually, it's not this note. Wow, I'm getting awkward. Thanks, guys.
Love you, Danny.
Before that point, the Speak Dicely podcast is now being uploaded every other Friday, and you can listen to this anywhere that you listen to podcasts. On the off weeks that the podcast isn't being uploaded, I'll be hosting our D&D 5e actual play campaign, Play Dicely, every other Saturday on Twitch at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Watch the previous episodes on the Dicely D&D YouTube channel. Thank you both again for coming in. This has been a great conversation on Druids.
Always a pleasure to be on.
Always a good time.
And that's about all the time we have for this episode of the Speak Dicely podcast. So thank you all for tuning in. My name is Denny, and I will speak Dicely again with you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
This episode of the Speak Dicely podcast was produced and edited by myself, Teni Brant, and the intro and outro music were created by Teni Brant. Thank you for the support, and we'll see you next time on the Speak Dicely podcast.